We are telling stories and going on the job in Hollywood with my very special guest, Bruce Ferber, on today's Super Boomer Lifestyle Show. This is the show for super boomers and beyond that will enhance your lifestyle, health, empowerment, and more. Hello, everyone. Caren Glasser here, and I am so excited that you are here today. We have quite the show. My guest I've known for many, many years, and I'm just so excited that he is joining us today. But before we do that, let's just do some housekeeping. If you're here live, I'm thrilled. Make sure you comment below because we will, if you comment, put your comments right up on the screen. If you're here on replay, let me know you're here on replay because that's almost as good. And I will make sure to comment and respond to your messages to me. And finally, why don't you share? Click that button. You know you want to. Click the button, share it out to your network. Let people know that we're on live with our very special guest today, Bruce Ferber. Bruce Ferber is, now take notes because he's got quite the resume. He's an Emmy and Golden Globe nominated comedy writer. His credits include Home Improvement, where he served as the executive producer and showrunner, and that's actually where I think I met Bruce back in those days. His work has also received People's Choice and Kids' Choice Awards. His first novel, Elevating Overman, back in 2012, it caught the eye of actor Jason Alexander, who is now attached to a potential TV series for that. His second novel, Cascade Falls, in 2015, won the Foreword Indie Book of the Year Gold Prize for Humor and Bronze Prize for General Fiction. And he is joining us today to tell some stories and talk about his new book, The Way We Work, The Job in Hollywood. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Caren. Nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm just so happy that you're here, and we're going to be telling stories today, which is one of my very favorite things to do. But before we do that, I like to start the show by describing a super boomer. So I always like to ask everyone, how do you describe a super boomer? Now, personally, I describe a super boomer by not being defined by their age, by how they show up, and that they're fearless. Bruce, how do you define a super boomer?
A superhero, but not quite as powerful. Almost as powerful.
I love that.
I guess I never thought about what it means to be a super boomer, but what I would say that means is that you just keep working. I mean, you want to keep working. You hit a certain age, and especially as a creative person, the ideas don't stop coming. So right. You want to figure out a way to scratch that itch, satisfy that urge, and in my case, do the best work you're possibly capable of putting out there. So it means, we're the kind of people who just want to keep moving forward,
right,
and making whatever impact we can make.
And that's what you've done all your life. I mean, that is what you've done all your life. And so let's just talk a little bit about your journey from being a veteran writer on sitcoms and television, and then moving over, the transition over to becoming a writer.
An author, yeah. That transition, I mean, there are two parts to that story. There's the parts of how it happened, and then what the differences are between writing for TV and being an author. And in my case, what happened was, it starts off with a sad story. I had a wife who was very ill, and I had at a certain point responsibilities, and I decided to stop doing television or pursuing it because I needed to take care of her and, take care of business. And then she passed away, and a couple of years later, I felt like, well, you know what? I'm still a writer. I still want to do something, but I didn't want to do television. I didn't want to do sitcoms. Right. And it wasn't because I didn't have a sense of humor anymore, but that I had been doing that for so long. And another thing, I guess, about being a super boomer is that you don't want to stay doing the same thing your whole life.
Amen.
Yeah. And so at that point, I really had the urge to try something different, but I didn't know what. Mm-hmm. So it was my therapist who said to me, "Have you ever thought of writing a novel?" I said, "No, I can't write a novel. What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, you never know. Maybe you could do it." And then so one day I had an idea for a character, and I figured if I were going to write a novel, it would have to start with a character anyway. So I wrote this character named Ira Overman, who was a middle-aged guy who was in a similar position to where I was, that he wanted to do something different with his life, except I had been successful and he had never done anything successful. So, but I wrote this character and I wrote 3 pages of it. And it was, the story was that this guy didn't want the final act of his life to be like the last 2 acts of his life. He wanted to do something that was important, or at least something good, because the rest of his life had been mediocre. So he really wanted to change his life. So I wrote 3 pages of this character, and I really enjoyed writing this character. And then, and this is really unbelievable how this happened. One day I go to my mailbox and I take out the penny saver. And on the front page of the penny saver was an ad for life-changing LASIK surgery, $299 an eye. So, and this book was about a guy who wanted to change his life. So the book became about a guy. He goes, he figures, he doesn't really know how he's going to change his whole life, but he sees this ad and he says, you know what? I've been wearing glasses my whole life. If I have this, you know, it's not a big life change, but it's something. So he goes to have this life-changing LASIK surgery. And after that, he not only sees better, he sees the world differently. And as a result, he has more confidence and his whole world changes.
Oh my gosh, he's a super boomer. He was a super boomer himself.
Not only a super boomer, in the book, one of the major storylines is that he's been such a nerd and unsuccessful man his entire life that once he starts having an impact with other people, his best friend thinks that he has turned into a superhero. So,
oh my gosh. Well, see, perfect. This is actually perfect. And I didn't know that story, so that's absolutely perfect. So you wrote the book. Jason Alexander was interested. He actually did the audio for it. And as we said earlier, there's a potential TV series that is in the work. Right. So you then moved on to your next book, right? And actually, I think I interviewed you for that book when that came out, Cascade Falls. Tell us a little bit about that.
Cascade Falls was based on my many years going to visit my in-laws in Phoenix, Arizona. And they moved into one of these planned communities, retirement communities, with all of this water and fountains and things like this in a place that had no natural water. And it was just the whole idea of creating what that whole lifestyle seemed to me was that they were creating Florida in a place that was a desert. And so they put in palm trees and water and create what was supposed to be this idyllic community in what was then dairy farms that smelled awful, you know, at night. And it just, so I did this whole, and then I learned that the guy who developed this community where my in-laws lived was kind of an egotistical guy and had a biography written about him, like a vanity biography about all his building and all that. So that became a big character. So it's about this guy who has built Cascade Falls, which is the cheesiest building in the world, and about his son who has to move there because he's having trouble working. And he has to move from California to Cascade Falls.
It was a great book. If you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Bruce Ferber as we're talking about his history, his journey coming up to the new book that he has just came out yesterday. It launched yesterday. It's sold out, I believe you were telling me. And we're telling stories. We're telling stories. So as we move forward into your story, you now came together to do this book called, and I'm going to put the book up because, let's put this up. Hold on. I'm going to go backwards. Maybe not. Maybe we'll put it up from here. I don't know. We're going to see.
Yeah, we've got a video projector.
We do. We have a video camera. That's one of it. Okay, so we've got your book here. I'm going to put this on solo for a second. Here's your new book. It's called The Way We Work, right? And how did this happen? Where did this come from?
A while back, well, the genesis of this is that after working in television writing rooms for 20 years and sitting around with funny people all telling stories, just the craziest stories about their Hollywood work experiences, I thought to myself, that would make a good documentary.
Yeah.
And I had this documentary, it was called One Hollywood Story, where each person would get a chance to talk about one episode from their Hollywood career. And I thought, oh, this is a great idea, great idea. And then I started to think about it, and I realized that I would have wound up with like 90 minutes of talking heads, and that a lot of the people wouldn't necessarily look like Bradley Cooper or Jennifer Lawrence. They look kind of like me. And I thought, well, okay, maybe the way around that is to get like some clips from their work, but then that costs a fortune. You have to go to the studios and pay, for each clip. For one clip, it could cost more than to shoot the whole movie.
Right.
So I shelved that idea. And then years later, I was asked to write an essay for a book called Los Angeles in the 1970s. And I wrote about coming to Hollywood and my first job and all this kind of stuff. And it was a great experience. And then I thought later on, wait a minute, maybe that documentary is really a book. And maybe it's not necessarily one Hollywood story, but I get writers to write, just on a subject matter having to do with Hollywood that interested them, and get these really great essays from people I knew.
And the rest is history, right?
Well, there was another part.
Oh.
Then I thought, well, why does it have to be just writers? Maybe I could do a book that's sort of like the Studs Terkel book, Working, where he interviewed people in every job in America. I'll interview people below the line people who are costumers and script supervisors, and hear their point of view, because they don't usually get to talk about what they do. And so I kind of went after that. And then the third component was researching stuff that had already been written about this that I thought would fit into this book, and trying to get the rights to those pieces. And that's how that was the whole.
That's fascinating. For guys, this book is available on the superboomerlifestyle.com. Go pick it up. It's awesome. I actually pre-ordered, so I'm going to get my copy. I'm so excited about this. I have some comments. I'm going to put them up right now. The Way We Work, what a great book, full of lots and value. Joey says, congrats on all of your success in Hollywood, Bruce. Very impressive. And he's a really nice guy too, Joey, on top of everything else. So we got the whole package here. One of the things that I find really fun is, and you saw it, was this camera. This is for outdoor video. You can literally invite the neighborhood and project a movie right on the screen. You maybe want to project Home Improvement, maybe get some television, television shows and project them. Pretty cool stuff. So, okay, so let's talk about the contributors. You have, as you said, a ton of people that are involved with the books. Who are some of your, well, maybe you don't want to tell who your favorites are. Who are some of the ones that stick out to you?
Okay, there's one. I mean, I only say that this sticks out because it's a really unlikely story that came from somebody who isn't even a writer, and he wrote this up as an essay. And this is a story in the book. It's called the Yeshiva Gopher, and what it's about they made a movie a while back called The Frisco Kid. And what the movie was about, it was about an Orthodox rabbi in the Old West. And Gene Wilder was the star of the movie, the great Gene Wilder. And so one of the contributors in the book had this experience. He was an assistant director, and he was in the assistant director trainee program. And he was hired to do this movie, The Frisco Kid. And when they shot, and he was raised an Orthodox Jew in Brooklyn. So when they started shooting The Frisco Kid, and they shot in the studio, the interiors, they had a rabbi on staff, and they had all kinds of Jewish advisors to, so they got things right. But they were on location shooting in Colorado, and they had no religious advisors out there. And then they found out that this guy, who was a young DGA trainee, had been brought up Orthodox in Brooklyn. Oh. So one day, Gene Wilder's in his trailer, and he tells somebody else, he says, I have this scene where I want to curse at the chickens in Yiddish. And how do I do that? And so they find out that this DGA trainee, Herb, was raised an Orthodox Jew. So they shove this kid into the trailer with the star, Gene Wilder, and he says, kid, I got to go out there. Got to curse the chickens in Yiddish. What do I say? And so Herb says, well, I don't know Yiddish. I know Hebrew. I was raised Orthodox, but I don't know that. He said, but my father in Brooklyn knows Yiddish. He says, call your father. Call your father. So they're in the trailer, and Herb is standing next to Gene Wilder, and he calls his parents in Orthodox Brooklyn, and his mother answers the phone. He says, hi, Mom, it's Herb. She says, how come you never call? And he says, I'm calling you now. I'm at work. Well, you could call more, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So she guilts him, and finally he gets his father on the phone, and because he's the one who he needs to talk to.
Right.
And the father, of course, asks him why he doesn't call more, and this goes on and on. And then he says, Dad, I'm working on a movie, and I'm here with the star, Gene Wilder. And the father says, who? Because Orthodox Jews don't go and see movies. They don't know who anybody is. So, but the funny part is that he's standing next to Gene Wilder, Herb is, and he doesn't want to embarrass the star by letting the star know
that his
father doesn't know who he is. So he's in this really awkward position.
Right.
And and the story is great. It gets even better from there. I don't want to give away.
So don't give it away, but will we find out how to do that in Yiddish in the book?
We'll find out what happened. Let's put it that way.
Okay, we'll find out what happened. Guys, you heard it here first. You need to go. I'm going to have, that's the first story that I'm going to open up for sure. So that's hysterical. Any other stories stick out? One of the things that you talk about is that there was this bug that some of the contributors referred to there seems to be a common denominator. What is that bug?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. There's another story that is written by a woman who later became an agent, and she's somebody who went to NYU with me, and her first job was when she was a student at NYU. She got asked to work on the movie Mean Streets that Marty Scorsese was directing in New York, and they had some I guess it was the last bit of shooting they had to do, and they needed to do it cheap, and they pulled some students in who didn't know what they were doing, but they were excited to work on a movie, and they figured it out as they went along, and she got hired to be the script supervisor. And it's all about, that story is all about how when she worked with Marty, this guy's command of cinema and his knowledge were what inspired her that she had to be in this business. So
wow. Yeah. So it's the bug.
It's the bug. So that was the bug. A lot of people have the bug, but it comes from different places.
But it seems to be a common denominator. That's something, they get a bug up there, and they have to.
Oh, you really have to, and you really have to want to do it badly, because it's really hard to be successful at it.
So, what's your next? What are you going to do after this?
I got another novel I'm working.
Do you? Are you already working on it?
The first draft is about done, actually, and so I'm going through it, because in publishing there's a long lead time between when you hand in the book to when it actually comes out. Right. So you have a lot of time on your hands, and you got to think about, well, what am I going to do now? And so I wrote a couple of TV pilots, and finally I started on this novel, and so that's what I'm really into right now, the novel.
So the book launched yesterday. It's in the bookstores. People can go right now to the Super Boomer Lifestyle, and you can actually pick up the book there. I know you have a big launch party on Sunday, I believe. Is it Sunday?
Sunday. And then I have a book event in Brentwood in Los Angeles, Diesel Books, on the 21st. And on the 27th, I'm doing this really fun thing. There's a theater called the Hayward Theater near downtown. And there's a group called Dynasty Typewriter, which took over the Hayward Theater, and they have tons of comedy shows. They're fantastic. And they asked me if I would do a book event during the day that day. So I have 5 contributors from the book, some of whom are going to read their pieces, some of whom I'm going to interview. And then I have 2 guest stars, people that I've worked with in other capacities. Jason Alexander is going to stop by, and Elisa Donovan, who worked with me on Sabrina and one of the stars of Clueless.
Is this open? Is this open to the public, or is this by invite only?
Typewriter is open to the public. The launch party is not.
So the first one, though, if you give me, I'll get the information from you after the show, and I'm going to put it in the comments for those of you who happen to be in the area and you want to go meet Bruce in person. I bet you're going to be signing books. Are you going to be signing books?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. So, go buy a book and then go get the book, or you can get the book.
And they can get the book right there.
Get the book right there, and Bruce will sign it and get to know him. For those of you, and I'm sure it's everyone watching this show that want to find out more about Bruce, you can first go visit his website. That's bruceferber.net. There's no com there, .net. Make sure you do the .net. You can follow Bruce on Instagram. I love your Instagram handle, Ferberama. Oh my God, I just totally love that. And then also on Twitter, Bruce F. So two different things. And
that's weird, but
Yeah, well, it is. Hey, here's Bruce. So Bruce F. Yeah, there you go. Any last minute thoughts you'd like to share with our audience in terms of following their passion, becoming the super boomer that they're meant to be, and not letting anyone tell them that they can't do something? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of deliver. You got to deliver something. I mean, the other day I got something, it was an Instagram private message from somebody I knew in high school who said, I got an idea for a movie. Who do I talk to? What do I do? And, who's out there who I can pitch this to? And I had to step back and say, listen, nobody wants to hear this from you. And why does nobody want to hear it from you? Because you haven't done the work yet. And so when you have an idea for a movie, somehow, some way, even if you're not a writer, you got to get that movie written.
Right.
So because if you've never done this before, why is anyone going to pay you for something that you haven't proven that you know how to execute? So no matter what you do on this path, if it can be small, it can be big, don't expect it to be coming to you. Especially in this world. I mean, in this world, you see people now who want to be in the movie business. They're making their own YouTubes. They're really going above and beyond to show their talent. And that's what it takes these days. Just because you feel like I want to be in this path and I want to change, you have to put in the work.
I so agree. That is such great advice. Bruce, thank you. I know how busy you are. You're now on the book, trail, and you're doing what you're doing. And I really want to thank you for coming on the show again and for having a chance really to catch up with you. It's been quite a while. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to drop you into the green room as I do my final little goodbye to everyone. And again, thank you. So it's now time for the Super Boomer lifestyle, the Super Boomer moment. And this is where I actually talk about something that struck a chord with me. And actually, it was the very last thing that Bruce said. And that was to do the work. You have to do the work. You can't just think it's going to come to you. Anybody that tells you that you dream it and it's just going to show up, that's not true. You have to do the work. Whatever it is that, even if you're passionate about it, you have to do the work. So important. Great advice, Bruce. I want to thank everyone for joining us today because we know that you have a choice as to where you spend your time. You chose to spend it with Bruce and I today, and we are very happy that you did that. So make sure you go out and give somebody an awesome day, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Super Boomer Lifestyle Show. Goodbye, everyone.